Welcome to Fantasy Focus. Today's podcast is presented by Geico. You can watch us every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN's Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook feeds, as well as the ESPN app. And you can download Fantasy Focus wherever you get your podcasts. It is Monday, December 14th. Dang it, why do I always forget what the date is? I have to look at my watch. I believe it's December 14th, December 13th. I was off by a day.
So you
Close
forgot
enough.
the date,
Yeah.
and then you looked it up and still got it wrong.
No, I looked it up and then I got it right. I just was guessing December 13th and I was wrong.
Got it,
I was
understand.
anxious. We have one game left in week 14. Just want to make sure I didn't get that one wrong as well. And with that, we say hello. Field Matthew, Stephania. No Daniel here today. Kyle holding it down in Daniel's seat. Good morning, Matthew. How are you, my friend?
You know what? I'm good. And,
Okay.
you know, like we always talk about this, obviously, many people listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. Some people just see the video clips that we do on digital video in the ESPN Fantasy app. But there is a certain group of people. There's a dedicated hardcore audience that tunes in every morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, and watches us on ESPN's YouTube channel, on Twitter at Fantasy Focus, or the ESPN app, the ESPN Fantasy app, ESPN Fantasy's Facebook page. And if you were one of those people, and you're like, why would people do that? And I'll tell you why. Because when you do stuff like that, if you don't do that, what happens is you miss stuff like Stephania frantically snapping her fingers. What was that about, Stephania? That you were you were snapping your fingers at Thirsty Kyle and trying to be sly about it and not doing it at all, failing miserably.
I am still struggling to get ready here. This is, and you
It doesn't
just
show a bit.
Did you put me on camera?
Yeah, you're on camera now.
Exactly.
Thanks. Because Kyle, Kyle just brought me the return. You might recall, no, you probably don't know. You probably don't care. You know, but you don't care.
Yeah.
Because you sit in Mr. Important seat. I don't have a
Is this
return
Mr.
monitor.
Important seat?
I don't have a return monitor.
Normally
so
it
I
is.
can't see what's actually
It's on Thursdays.
Yeah.
on the camera. And so normally Daniel sets it up for me, and Kyle's sitting in the Daniel seat, and he had it set, but it was blank. So he came over to fix it, and I knew it was on.
So Kyle did something wrong.
And I
So you
was
were
trying to
snapping your
protect
fingers at
him.
Kyle
I was
as
trying
if
to
you
give
were
him
one of
a
your minions
sign
to fix
so that he wouldn't walk right in front of the camera and have an
not for
awkward
this
moment.
whole diatribe here, nobody would have known that wasn't set up. Nothing was done wrong.
I blame
Everything
Matthew for
moving
the
around.
record.
Okay.
I
No,
blame
Matthew had to call it to
for the
everyone's
record.
attention.
That's what I like
That's what he
doing.
does.
You know
That's what he
what?
does.
You know what we should do?
So here we are.
We should
It's
get to
Monday.
football. Let's get to the football,
Yeah.
shall we? And we'll go right back to Stephania, whose camera is now in place. We're
Are
going to
you
talk
good,
about
Stephania? Are you okay? Are you fine? I want to make sure you're all set for our broadcast.
My team won yesterday. That's all
I was going to say, Stephania, I missed that again. I missed the 49ers.
Stephania's mic legit does sound low to me. I will say that.
Really? Your hearing could be going as well.
That's also true, by
Hearing,
the
it's a
way.
natural progression.
I am
Sounds
1,000
fine
years
to me.
old.
Let me say it again. The 49ers won yesterday.
There we go. 26-23 was indeed the score. Remember last week we led off the show with
Come on,
the
Cincinnati.
Geico high score of the week. It was George Kittle. This just in. The high score of the week again, George Kittle, who has
What a
been
beast.
unbelievable. Stephania,
Love.
let me get to some injuries, though. And unfortunately, we got to start with a little bit of bad news. And that begins with the Baltimore Ravens, who have dealt with so many injuries this year, but none more significant than what they could be facing right now with their quarterback, Lamar Jackson, who left yesterday's game early and was carted off against the Browns.
I know. It was really depressing to see that because we haven't seen him miss a game due to injury. We have talked about the fact that Lamar Jackson has been really quite durable despite being a target as a running quarterback. The only time he's missed a game has been due to illness, and that's really been the focus of our conversation. Well, he's been healthy in recent weeks, but he got taken down from behind, tackled, and on that play injured his ankle. He left the stadium in a walking boot. Diana Rossini reported that they are calling it a low ankle sprain, or it was interesting phrasing. That's what they expect the diagnosis to be. John Harbaugh saying that he would undergo more testing today and then they would have a better idea. So no details yet, but if it is indeed a low ankle sprain and maybe it's not too significant, then maybe we're not looking at much missed time, if any.
They play the Packers next week. A reminder, buys are done. We have no buys. Wake up tomorrow morning. Yay! Every team will have played 13 games. Every team will have 4 games left, which includes a division foe in week 18 for every single NFL team. Stephania, we'll talk more about both Lamar's status tomorrow and also potential waiver wire contingency plans, the names that include like Justin Fields, Jimmy Garoppolo, Cam Newton, those types of quarterbacks. Not a slam dunk option, but we'll sift through the variety of options that are available. Austin Ekeler and the Chargers play on Thursday night, Stephania. Unfortunately, he left the game yesterday early against the Giants. What happened there?
Yeah, he left in the third quarter. He, too, with an ankle injury. Good news, Brandon Staley said that they don't expect him to miss time. In fact, potentially could have returned to the game, but they decided not to have him do that. So that's about the best news you can hope for, right?
Yeah, this game was certainly out of hand as the Chargers won this game handily. It was 37-21 as a final. The Giants got a couple of garbage time touchdowns, which did count for fantasy, though. I'm going to have both the Chargers running backs on the waiver wire, because, and I say both, meaning Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. And my feeling is, like, if I had to choose one of them, I'd pick Justin Jackson. Not sure I feel great about either of them, but more to come tomorrow. Hopefully, it's all a moot point. Kareem Hunt, Stephania, left for the Browns yesterday. This was one where...
If I may just real quickly offer that. Yeah. Thank you. I agree with you that I think Justin Jackson, the most likely pass-catching option. But I think you'd also see, in addition to Kelly, I think you'd see Larry Roundtree active. I don't think that, unlike other situations where we've seen this year where Dalvin Cook goes down and it's Alexander Madison, right? You know, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are out and it's Dearness Johnson. Or, you know, if Ezekiel Elliott were going to go down, it'd be Tony Pollard, Kamara, from Mark Ingram, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think there is a one-for-one replacement here for Austin Ekeler. I believe it would be a committee approach, and I don't believe any of them would come anywhere close to Austin Eckler's production.
I think I would agree on that. More on that tomorrow, though, when we get into the waiver wire. Stephania, Kareem Hunt returned a few weeks ago for the Browns. The expectation was a bunch of snaps yesterday, and then he got hurt again.
He did. He had an ankle injury. It didn't look terrible when it happened, although he looked to be in some discomfort. But you never know with those things how serious they are until later. Kevin Stefanski afterwards said that Kareem Hunt was fighting to go back in, but they just didn't think it was smart to put him back out there. And I think that was the intelligent move, right? There was no reason to take a chance on someone who's missed multiple times with a lower extremity injury. He did say they would get imaging done today, so we should know more about the details of his injury after this afternoon.
As we know, if he's out, the Browns have a good third-string running back. Dearness Johnson was great for the Browns when he was the starter in 2 separate occasions earlier this year. We'll have an update on Kareem Hunt sometime later this week. Terry McLaurin, Stephania, this one was tough. It looked bad when it happened. What do we know about his injury?
Well, concussion, and he was quickly ruled out for the rest of the game, and Terry McLaurin will now, you can assume, be in the concussion protocol.
And they possibly might have their best receiver. They won't have their best tight end, Logan Thomas. A lot of injuries, obviously, for Washington, and they may not have their second-string quarterback on Sunday, as Taylor Heinicke also got banged up.
Yeah, Taylor Heinicke with a knee injury. We saw Kyle Allen come in. Taylor Heinicke looked to be in a great deal of pain as he got taken down. You know, it looked like he didn't even see that hit coming. I mean, that was rough. So Washington going through multiple quarterbacks right now.
Washington down to Kyle Allen. And do they have a fourth string? I'm not even being funny. Like, is there a guy in the back? Who's the backup there?
They have a guy in the practice
Steven
squad.
Montez, they
I
still
believe
have?
that is. Yeah, I believe Montez
from
is
Colorado,
still there.
I think it'd be there.
But I'll be honest with you. I'm not 100% sure. Kyle's going to look it up for me right now.
I think it's Steven Montez. Yeah.
It was in the preseason.
Yeah, believe he's still there.
I believe he's on the practice squad.
Yeah. Or he would be brought back to the practice squad this week if they don't have anybody there. Things have been.
I will say they like Kyle Allen a lot. He has been in that system, Scott Turner's system, for a number of years. Obviously, first at Carolina, and then they brought him back to Washington. Kyle Allen actually started a couple of games for Washington last year in the Dwayne Haskins, Alex Smith triumvirate. What they were rolling out at quarterback last year. So to me, the bigger concern obviously is Terry McLaurin. Love Taylor Heinicke. Hope he gets better. Will say that he expressed optimism after the game that he would be okay. We'll see what the MRI brings. But I actually think that for the extent that fantasy managers care, i.e. whether it's Antonio Gibson, Ricky Seals-Jones, perhaps any of the complimentary receivers, if Terry McLaurin were to miss this game, I think Kyle Allen will be fine. He's a professional quarterback. He'll be able to run the offense. So you're not picking up Kyle Allen, but I think the offense will be just as efficient, and it'll be fine for the Antonio Gibsons and Ricky Seals-Joneses of the world.
They play Philadelphia twice in the next 3 weeks, including in Week 15. One more, Stephania, here, and just an incredible effort by Josh Allen yesterday, who basically kept the Bills in that game almost by himself on offense. After the game, though, he was spotted in a walking boot. What's going on?
Yeah, it sounds like he had probably so much adrenaline. I don't think he even realized exactly what happened. And his quote afterwards tells you that. He said, honestly, I'm not quite sure. I guess we'll do some tests tomorrow, but I finished the game on it, so I don't think it's going to be a big deal. We have seen this before. You know, sometimes the adrenaline kicks in. Sean McDermott made it sound like they just weren't really sure yet about how significant this injury was, that he would get more done. He said, yeah, our medical staff checked with him. There was talk. He said he could tell from being on the headset, there was talk about how he was, what he could do. He's a warrior. He played his butt off. So I think everyone's acknowledging that he fought through something clearly, but boots are protective, and it can be a range of things. I feel like I need to have this reminder out there every so often. Sometimes somebody's in a boot, it ends up being a season-ending injury. Sometimes they're in a boot, and it's really just proactive to kind of let them put less weight through the joint and kind of protect it until they get all the details about the injury.
Emmanuel Sanders also left the game. And just a couple quick thoughts here on Josh Allen's, by the way. Like, first of all, remarkable. Like, it sounds like there's a chance he could be back on the field in week 15. What I think people will wonder will be, he had his best game as a rusher yesterday of the season.
Yeah.
Will they try to limit those opportunities a little bit? You can't totally change his instincts, but maybe a few less designed runs. It probably didn't help that they were playing Tampa yesterday. They didn't run the ball with a running back until the second half. They had 0 first half carries for a running back. So sort of a perfect confluence of factors led to Josh Allen being so busy yesterday. Maybe, just maybe, if he is dealing with this toe, foot, ankle injury, whatever it is after the game and going forward, maybe they'll have a few less designed runs for him in the final 4 weeks of the regular season.
It was interesting. So I don't want to call anyone out specifically by name. I'll just say that watching that game live in the war room with a number of people that have worked and played in the NFL, immediately when that play happened, a number of people within the war room were like, sort of like, he hurt his toe. He's like, you watch, the adrenaline's going to kick in, but that's going to hurt tomorrow. Like, they were just like, you know, like, there were just a lot of people that just noticed, like, hey, that's, you know, that may be something right there.
I've
and
been
sure
in that
enough,
room.
huh?
I've heard the calls. They're not always right, but we'll see.
But, well, I mean, like, I mean, whatever. He was certainly in a walking boot after the game. He's a very tough player, but also noting that, like, there was the reports, our own Chris Mortensen reporting after the game, that Mitch Trubisky is expected to take increased reps this week on the chance that Josh Allen may not be available.
That's right.
So,
one more
we'll
Stephania from Buffalo is Emmanuel Sanders, who left the game early yesterday.
I know, with a knee injury, and we haven't really seen that much out of Emmanuel Sanders, and we've wondered why, right? Because the start of the season, he was such a big factor in the offense, and now yesterday it was actually an injury that kept him out of the second half. No detail yet on it, but I assume as we hear more about Josh Allen, we'll also hear about Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, one of those probably slides under the radar a little bit more, given the fact that the quarterback was hurt as well. Gabe Davis had another good game for Buffalo yesterday. He's now caught a touchdown in back-to-back games. 5 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown. I got to be honest with you. I mentioned this, 3 weeks ago, like, hey, there are smart Buffalo reporters that are clamoring for more Gabe Davis in the offense in general.
Sure. This
probably opens the door if Emmanuel Sanders is unable to play on Sunday against Carolina.
They like him a lot in Buffalo. I will tell you, I have 3 dynasty teams, and he's on 2 of them. And I have tried to trade for him in the 3rd league. I really liked Gabriel Davis quite a lot as a player. I know Buffalo does as well. You've already seen the increase. We talked about this last week when Buffalo was trailing that Monday night game against New England. Like, not only did Gabe Davis score last week, but, like, at the end of the game, they tried to get him another touchdown. Like, they were going to him in clutch situations here. And so I would think, as you write the free agent finds column, the waiver wire column, I would hope that Gabriel Davis would make it.
He certainly does have a shot of being on there, especially if we find out more information today about Emmanuel Sanders and that knee injury. Let's get to a couple more injuries, and some of these are not new injuries, Stephania, but injuries we knew about, and that includes the 49ers backfield, where there was no Elijah Mitchell yesterday. Do we have any sense of the timing, because he's now dealing with a concussion and also a knee issue?
Yeah, the knee is a little bit puzzling. We haven't heard any detail about it. I mean, the concussion was the thing that everybody was watching all week, because there was a suggestion that maybe he would be available. But clearly that's not going to happen. And so I don't know about next week is what I'm saying. This week, he obviously did not play. Jermichael Hasty and Jeff Wilson were the running backs.
Yeah, and along those lines, Jeff Wilson handled every running back rush attempt yesterday. Problem was, Deebo Samuel had 8 of his own rushing attempts as they kind of used him as their number one running back yesterday. So I think
he looked good though. I think the takeaway from that was it was a groin injury.
Yeah.
And remember, he was very questionable coming into yesterday. He'd only practiced a tiny bit on Friday. Always nervous with the 49ers. Some of these guys who have come back have had a history of going out again with a more significant injury. So they probably were cautious initially, but he looked great running and no reported after effects. He was fine after the game.
Yeah, there might be like the takeaway might be that he looked amazing, which is certainly the biggest takeaway. But until all those running backs are healthy, it might just take a tiny notch off of Deebo Samuel's fantasy value because he's so busy as a running back that the opportunity for catches have been reduced. If you play in a PPR league, he had 1 catch yesterday, just 1, which he still got you 12.9 fantasy points because he's Deebo Samuel. But a month and a half ago, if I told you he's getting 10 opportunities in the game, you're like, wow, 10 catches for Deebo Samuel, that's money. Now he might get 15 opportunities in the game, and 13 of them may be rushing attempts, at least until Elijah Mitchell or any of the other 49ers running backs are back alongside Jeff Wilson Jr. Wilson's probably going to make the waiver column again just because we don't know about Elijah Mitchell, but I think yesterday proved, like, when Elijah Mitchell's the guy, he's the guy. Jeff Wilson Jr. is the guy, but not a dominant force like Elijah Mitchell is.
I will say, though, listen, Cincinnati's got a better than they get credit for defense. And it was sort of Jeff Wilson's first game as, quote, the lead guy. Having Deebo Samuel back there obviously limits his value, but they play Atlanta at home this week.
Yeah, good opportunity.
So, meaning the Falcons are traveling to San Francisco. So I would, if Elijah Mitchell were out again, I would be more bullish on Jeff Wilson Jr. this week than I was this week playing Atlanta than I was last week against Cincinnati.
Stephania, the Lions had all sorts of questionable. They had 12 guys listed as questionable. They had to promote 7 players from the practice squad on Saturday, and their running back room has been dramatically impacted recently. What's going on there?
So DeAndre Swift, obviously with a shoulder injury, we heard Adam on Fantasy Football Now talking about like it might make sense to sit him for the rest of the year, especially depending on where the Lions stand. An AC joint sprain is really tough for a running back to come back from because every time you take a hit to that shoulder has the potential to aggravate it. So no DeAndre Swift right now. Jamal Williams was added to the reserve COVID-19 list, so they were without him yesterday. And TJ Hawkinson has a hand injury, which at the start of the week we didn't know too much about, but we saw him get downgraded to doubtful and then ultimately not available for this game. All we know is that his hand was heavily wrapped at one point late in the week, his left hand. So again, Detroit doesn't usually add too much in terms of detail for the injuries, but I thought it was interesting that TJ Hawkinson specifically was downgraded as the week went on.
All sorts of injuries there, and that included the backfield, as Stephania just highlighted. And yesterday, Adam Schefter, out of nowhere, drops a Craig Reynolds from Kutztown University long shot on us, and he actually played pretty well. Craig Reynolds had 28 snaps yesterday and 11.9 fantasy points, Matthew. Now, he split those carries, and let me see if I can. I want to make sure I get this as close to possible as I can.
Godwin Igwebuike, I believe.
Igwebuike. Yeah, Godwin Igwebuike is the pronunciation there, who yesterday also had 28 snaps. So it was an even split amongst those two players. Jamar Jefferson, nowhere to be seen. He had 3 total snaps.
He had been sick during the week. He
was also sick. Yep.
Yeah.
It seemed like Craig Reynolds was the most effective of the runners.
There's no question. Igwebuike.
Yep.
Igwebuike lost a fumble.
Yep.
And almost lost another one. If you're watching that game, like they got in close, and I was surprised because I agree with you. So in our War Room League where I had the Patriots running backs on bye and I was sort of desperate, it's a 16-team league, there's nothing on the waiver wire. I started Igwebuike in desperation. So I was watching that game very, very closely. And I was surprised that he got as much run as he did because I agree with you. Reynolds was the more effective runner. Igwebuike is an interesting guy. Like he's fast, you know what I mean? And like I can see why the Lions like him, but bad fumble. And then they get in close and I'm like, here comes Reynolds. And all of a sudden they give it to him. They give it to Igwebuike, and he fumbled. I mean, he almost got into the end zone, but then he also fumbled, ended up being recovered by Detroit. It went out of bounds, but they then pulled him from the sideline. So, 2 fumbles, one of which he lost. I agree with you. Reynolds is the more effective runner. The question becomes, does Jamal Williams make his return this week? And if so, then what's that role going forward? As part of the Craig Reynolds segment on Fantasy Football Now, just yet another reason to watch Fantasy Football Now every Sunday morning, right here on ESPN. Of course, I'm a company man. Is that Adam Schefter reporting that there's a possibility that DeAndre Swift gets shut down for the season. Obviously, like just logic makes sense that, he's an important part of what Detroit wants to do in the future. It is a lost season for the Lions. And so, I would not count on seeing DeAndre Swift again this season. Nothing's official, of course, but I think if you have him on your roster, you need to make plans to not have him for the rest of the year. And if you get him back, great, but, brace for the worst there. But it would be interesting to see, Field, what happens with Jamal Williams and Craig Reynolds post this game.
My expectation
is that Williams would be the guy. What?
Yeah, Williams is going to be the guy, right? It's not like this is like a veteran. This is not like, he is a veteran technically, but he's not like a 32-year-old, right, who's washed. Like he's a legit part of their future going forward. Like you got to get some Jamal Williams energy into that lineup if he is available. Just worth noting, again, Saturday he goes on the COVID-19 list. They play on Sunday. Every player's timeline is different, but it's possible we don't see Jamal Williams again. That would just be 8 days later. We've seen a variety of different timelines. Some guys have been back within 5 days. Some guys have been out for 2 weeks. It just depends. Let's move forward here. By the way, Amon-Ra St. Brown in that same game for the Lions, 12 targets, second straight week with 12 targets. Nice little player for them. He has been very busy. Let's get to two quickly, Stephania, before we hit our live reads here. Keenan Allen missed yesterday because of the COVID-19 list. Is there any chance we see him on Thursday night?
Well, Brandon Staley makes it sound like he expects to have him available. So I think Keenan Allen's been feeling well. It's a question of getting those two negative tests 24 hours apart, back to back. And there wasn't enough time for that to happen apparently this week, but they're hoping that they will have him on Thursday.
Okay, that is hopefully good news for the Chargers. Brandon Staley, he's moving up the rankings of coaches in terms of their transparency with injuries.
Brandon Staley,
really good.
He might get coach of the year for me because he has been very, very, very transparent. And guess what? Chargers still win games. For everyone out there who thinks that it's a huge disadvantage to be forthright with your information.
They are now 8-5. Thursday night might be the best Thursday night game of the year. Chargers hosting the Chiefs. Matthew, as far as the Chargers wide receivers are concerned, do you think that what we saw yesterday has any relevance to Thursday night if Keenan Allen plays, or is the fact that Jalen Guyton had 3 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown, and Josh Palmer had 5 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown, simply a byproduct of the fact that Keenan wasn't there? When he's back, you can't possibly thrust either of those guys into your playoff lineup, can you?
No, you can't.
Okay.
So that's correct. It was a byproduct of Keenan Allen being unavailable. Like, they'll take occasional deep shots to Jalen Guyton, and sometimes they'll hit. Jalen Guyton's an exciting young player, and that's what happened in this game. It's happened previously as well. But the idea that you could count on that when you have a healthy Mike Williams and a healthy Keenan Allen, I can't imagine. Look, we've talked about it before. Justin Herbert's a special player, and so I think Guyton's a really nice piece for the Chargers. But as a fantasy asset, if Williams and Keenan Allen are out there, I can't imagine starting them, especially not in a Week 15 playoff scenario. Josh Palmer, to me, ended up running more routes, felt like he was more of the Keenan Allen role than Jalen Guyton. Jalen had won the one big play, basically. And by the way, really nice play. And if you started either one of those guys, I think you were very happy. Yeah. But
daily plays. They were
DFS plays. Yeah. They were absolutely DFS plays. Jalen Guyton made me some money yesterday in DFS.
Hello.
Yeah.
Stephania, the Raiders had a bye yesterday. So is Darren Waller, I know, hold on. They played? The Raiders played yesterday?
Yes, they did.
What happened?
They did not play well, but they were the
were physically present.
The game happened.
I think they were physically present.
Yeah, they were physically present.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it was brutal.
I mean, I don't know that they didn't seem like they understood the assignment,
right?
But they were there.
Someone said they were auditioning for So You Think You Can Dance. Is that the next season? Does that show still exist?
Very possibly.
Unbelievable. Just pathetic.
Listen.
Don't get me started. I'm so fired up about a couple of things right now in the NFL. That's one of them. But Stephania,
I like fired up Field. I know.
Let's go ahead.
Go.
Come on, Field. Soapbox. Let's go.
If you want to get me going right now,
yeah,
Raiders
we do.
And
we
the
like
Jaguars.
It.
We got to get moving here in just a few minutes. But I would just say, like, Who on earth thought there was any upside to doing that? Like, when has that ever worked in any team or any player's favor? By the way, this is the same Raiders team that a month ago played the Chiefs on their own home turf and lost 41-14. You really think going to Arrowhead Stadium, dancing on the middle of the field is going to psych Patrick Mahomes out? Ooh, I'm literally perhaps the greatest quarterback of my age ever. And I'm supposed to be afraid by a Raiders defense? They couldn't catch. I mean, are you kidding me? Yeah. They had 5 touchdown passes the last time we played the Chiefs. How about rather than dancing on the field before the game, you work on a game plan that might provide a little bit of resistance against this Chiefs offense, who yesterday got touchdowns from the like of Derek Gore. Who also was Byron Pringle? Did he catch one of those? Did Jody Foster?
No. I think Mecole Hardman got one in. Right?
Mecole Hardman, did he have one?
Mecole, like Daryl Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire got 2.
Right?
Daryl Williams got 1. Derek Gore got 1 in junk time.
Josh Gordon.
Josh Gordon. I forgot. Josh Gordon.
Are you kidding me? Like,
first time in like over 800 days or something like that.
I'm just embarrassed. Like, and Derek Carr after the game was like, "Listen, it's one of those things I was not advocating for, but what are you going to do?" And your whole teammates or a lot of your teammates want to go do it. Just so bad, man. So bad. Play the football game. Worry about your fundamentals more so than your dance moves before the game begins. But Stephania, one player who was not dancing was Darren Waller because he did not play in this game.
Right. Say dealing with that IT band injury. Didn't even practice at all this week. Yeah. So, luckily Darren Waller, not part of the group, not part of the dancing crew.
He could be back next week, but as Stephania said, no practice this past week. Yeah. We'll see. He went from week to week to day to day. We'll see. Rich Bisaccia, the Raiders head coach, probably will address that later on today.
What else are you fired up about? I'm
the Jaguars.
Jaguars. Yeah.
Just what a disaster they are.
I'll tell you. Let me do the libraries, and then I'll tell you about that. All right. 3 catches, 13 yards for Foster Moreau. He's playing a ton of snaps, and he had an end zone target yesterday. But you got to get lucky if you're playing Foster Moreau as your tight end. Then again, you have to get lucky if you're not playing like anybody besides George Kittle at tight end these days. We're coming back, talk about Urban Meyer, and also trust is a strong word. Matthew, what do you got?
Do you rent or own your home?
Yes.
Sure you do. And I bet it can be hard work. I wouldn't know, but I bet it can be. But I can tell you what's easy, and that's bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy, and it is a good thing as well because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, see how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Think about the major life-changing moments you've had, like buying your first car, getting married, having your first kid.
Starting this podcast.
Let's say starting Derek Gore in fantasy yesterday.
Sure.
Of course, there's also landing that big job you've been going after, which can bring new opportunities for growth, hopefully a higher salary, new coworkers, new friends, and awesome new career achievements.
Wait a minute. Are you supposed to get friends at work?
Yeah.
Man, oh man, I got to start reading the fine print.
Whether you're trying to get your first real job out of college, achieve a new title, or land your dream job, you should go to ZipRecruiter.com/easy because ZipRecruiter makes it easy to find the next job that could change your life. How? ZipRecruiter acts like your free personal recruiter. When you create a free profile, ZipRecruiter starts working for you. They send you jobs that match your skills and experience. They even pitch your profile to employers whose job matches your experience. If someone from that company really likes what they see, they can personally invite you to apply for their job. No wonder ZipRecruiter is the #1 rated job site by G2. So if you're looking for that life-changing job, ZipRecruiter is a game changer. They make your whole job search experience better. Sign up for free at ZipRecruiter.com/easy today. Once again, go to ZipRecruiter.com/easy right now to sign up. Absolutely free, and put ZipRecruiter to work for you. We're going to play a game of trust is a strong word in just a minute. But do you want to have my little Urban Meyer thoughts?
I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I go for the rest of the show. I can go for the rest of the show. I really could. No, I can go for the rest of the show if you wanted to, but I'm going to keep this bite-sized version. Here's what I will just say, because there are a lot of things that frustrated me about this. But what's clearly evident is you think about there's a coach who's under a lot of scrutiny right now in the NFL, whose job, in some people's eyes, may be up for replacement this offseason. Mike Zimmer, okay?
Right.
Mike Zimmer, who, by the way, has led the Vikings to playoffs. By the way, he spent like nearly 30 years as an assistant grinding his way to the top of the NFL to become an NFL head coach, right? Say what you want about the results and say what you want about some of the things that have taken place for Minnesota this season. I know they find ways to lose some heartbreaking games, but you can never question that Mike Zimmer has always been incredibly passionate about the opportunity that he has. He's been incredibly grateful for the opportunity he has as a head coach. He's always put his players first. I've never heard Mike Zimmer ever once, at least I can't recall a time, where he sold his players down the river, threw them under a bus, you name it, publicly after the game during a press conference. I'm just using Mike Zimmer as an example here, right? There are a lot of coaches that fit this criteria, right? But he's an example because a lot of people say it's time to go. Yeah, I'm just saying he's somebody who's
Matt Nagy hasn't led the Bears to, but I mean, I'm just saying like that's a guy that has grinded through the NFL. That's like also under fire.
I get like they like there's a certain way to act publicly, right? There's not that many. Like I know we hear from these coaches a lot during the season. Like there's so few rules you have to follow to make it easy. It's really not that hard. And Urban Meyer, who never coached in the NFL before, gets a job right away. One of the highest paid salaries, by the way. There is zero joy whatsoever in what he is doing right now. I get it, you're losing, but like show a little bit of emotion and passion. You look like a dead fish out there after games, right? You're constantly head down, bending over in the middle of games. Like
what about during games?
During games, yeah, no
headset.
I was like,
6 minutes to go, down 20 points. Don't even have the headset on. Yeah. Like it's just so the handshake with Mike Vrabel yesterday, in which he barely even put his palm out there. Like it's just so frustrating on so many levels.
Like they coached on the same staff together. Yeah. Mike Vrabel was on. Like it's not like these guys don't know each other.
Right. There's a history there. So anyways, it's just so frustrating. I go on for a long. I'm going to keep it relatively toned down because we have a lot of stuff to get to here for fantasy. I've already said too much, but let's get to
we'll make it fantasy relevant though, because I want to pile on a little bit here.
Yeah, go for it, Stephania. Stephania rant. Usually I'm the ranty guy. This is exciting for me. Go Stephania.
You talk about disrespecting the players. First of all, Trevor Lawrence deserves to have an opportunity to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. So I hope this is not a sign of things to come. You know, we've heard our new colleague Alex Smith talking about how the scars of an early bad setup can hurt you, and then you have to overcome those. You have to work to overcome those. And Trevor Lawrence is too good of a talent and deserves a better opportunity there. So he deserves the support. Number two, Trevor Lawrence talked about needing James Robinson out there. So James Robinson, who we know is talented, who we know has the ability to be an awesome running back. And when Travis Etienne went down, we should have seen James Robinson start to get more and more play right away. And then we hear from Urban Meyer that James Robinson is going to do more, and nothing has changed. I mean, it's not just my eyeballs, right, guys? Like, oh my God, James Robinson's not touching the ball. He's not involved in the offense. I don't understand it at all.
James Robinson was on my hate list this week. And
you were wrong. We should put him on the evisceration list.
I mean, and like it's so funny because like him. So ESPN Social does a great job. They always put a little graphic together for me that I post on my Instagram and my Twitter that shows some of the loves and hates that I select. And so one of them was James Robinson, and all the comments, especially on my Instagram, were all about how wrong I was on James Robinson and how he was going to go off and squeaky wheel, he's going to get the grease and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, first off, wasn't a great matchup. But beyond that, like, I agree with you, Stephania. He's a super talented player, but there is crazy dysfunction in Jacksonville right now, and you cannot assume rational coaching. You cannot assume that the Jaguars are going to put their best players in a position to succeed, which is what rational coaching would do. You would think like, oh, James Robinson, clearly one of the best players on that team, will be out there. And that's not the case. And if you've seen some of the reporting that went on, over this weekend about what's going on in Jacksonville and with Urban Meyer, it is eye-opening to say the least and concerning to say the most. And again, like that's one side of the story. And I'm sure Urban Meyer and the Jaguars would have another version of it, but still, like, there's a mounting piles of evidence that suggests things are not good in Jacksonville, top to bottom, and it's a bummer for me because, like to your point, like there's 32 jobs. There's only 32 of those jobs in the entire world, and we feel you and I both know a number of people that are well deserving of those jobs.
I mean, listen, there have been. Like I was thinking yesterday, like, what do you think Jim Caldwell thinks right now, right? Like Jim Caldwell, who who gets fired, like an incredible leader of men. Like, what's he thinking right now watching this disaster?
Right. Anyways, he got fired at 9-7.
Yeah. Like this, like he's one example of several of coaches that have been ousted by doing far more than what Urban Meyer has done so far in his first season. It's 11:34. We're going to get all the way to 11:57, 3 minutes Monday Night Football talk. In 23 minutes, we're going to rip through a bunch of topics. Trust is a strong word. Our thoughts are going to be sharp and incisive. We start with the Chiefs, Matthew. 20.3 fantasy points for Patrick Mahomes yesterday. He completed 20 of 24 passes, 2 touchdowns, 20 rushing yards as well. Do you trust Patrick Mahomes? As crazy as that sounds right now, do you trust Patrick Mahomes in your starting lineup? I think the answer is yes, but I think I've gotten to the point, Matthew, where I don't know that I can count. I know that I think I am probably, if you had to bet between 30 or 18 fantasy points week over week for Patrick Mahomes, it feels like 18 points is more likely than 30.
1,000%. Again, the segment's called Trust is a Strong Word. You asked, do I trust Patrick Mahomes in my lineup? And the answer is no. Am I still starting him? Of course. Unless you manage to you grab Taysom Hill, in which case it's a conversation, absolutely. But on a short week at the Chargers, the LA Chargers, who've played really good defense, I don't think Patrick Mahomes is a slam dunk start this week. He's going to be inside my top 10, but is he going to be the number 1 or number 2 quarterback the way he was drafted to be? No, he will not be. So again, do I trust them? Am I blindly starting? Here's how I'm approaching this segment. Am I blindly starting these players, not looking at matchup or looking at any other options that I have? And so if that's the question with Patrick Mahomes, am I blindly starting him and not looking at whatever other options I might have? No, I'm not blindly starting him and not looking around. Not in a 10-team one quarterback league, no.
How about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? I think low end, he's a flex play, right?
Yeah, I think so, just because running back is so decimated. We expect the Chiefs to be able to score. And one of the reasons why you don't really trust Patrick Mahomes is because teams are playing deep on them and they're saying, we'll give up the dink and dunk. We don't care if you run on us. We don't care if you do a 5-yard bubble screen to Tyreek Hill or, just something a little over the middle. We're just not going to let you beat you deep. You're going to have to put together a 15-play drive against us.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree.
And so while that hurts Patrick Mahomes and we don't see the big plays and the moments, it certainly helps their running game.
I don't think it's the same conversation for Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, but I think it's similar, Matthew. 4 catches, 76 yards for Tyreek Hill yesterday. Travis Kelce, 3 catches, 27 yards. That's exactly what he did last week as well. Back-to-back games with 3 catches and 27 yards. Same question. Trusting them? Kind of because you have to, right?
Yes. So do I think this was just a blip? No, but in terms of am I automatically starting them and not looking around at other options? Yes, I am automatically starting Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I'm not looking around to see what other tight ends I might have or what other wide receivers. The upside of both those guys is too great. They're both automatic starts no matter what.
Right. And by the way, neither player has diminished in terms of overall skill set. This is all just a trickle-down impact of how teams are playing them defensively, but for, 30, 40 straight weeks, when I started my tight end rankings, all I did was I said Travis Kelce 1. Right. If you had to ask me for week 15, who's the number 1 overall tight end? We all know the answer. George Kittle, right? I mean, if you had the choice, if you could redraft for right now and you had one tight end pick this weekend, I'm not saying Kittle is going to guarantee to be the highest scoring tight end, but just in terms of perception right now and trust levels.
You feel a lot better about George Kittle against Atlanta than you do about Travis Kelce, who now has 4 straight games without a touchdown, fourth different game this past year with under 7 fantasy points. Guy had 4 targets in this game. Like they're not even looking for him as well. And so again, if Lamar Jackson is playing this week, you can make an argument for Mark Andrews, who had another monster game. I mean, honestly, he did a lot of his production with Tyler Huntley, so maybe it doesn't even matter. But yes, you'd be hard pressed to have a better option than Travis Kelce at tight end.
They're still incredible. He'll probably be the All-Pro, and he deserves it, right? He's one of the best players in the league still. This has nothing to do with Travis Kelce whatsoever. It's a byproduct of what has happened to how defenses have played the Chiefs this year. Let's go to the Cowboys. And Matthew, you said Patrick Mahomes might not be a slam dunk to start at quarterback. What does that make Dak Prescott?
Dude.
A conversation, right?
So we had a conversation on Fantasy Football Now about Dak versus Taysom Hill, and I said Taysom Hill, and we were going back and forth, me and you and Mike Clay. And I'm like, guys.
No, it was you and me versus Mike Clay. Let's be very clear
versus Mike Clay. This is true. So, we love Mike, and Mike is as good a fantasy football mind as there is in the industry, as there is at this company. We love Mike. But he has a couple of blind spots, and one of them is to Saquon Barkley, and one of them is to Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
We're
different kinds of blind spots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing I said on Fantasy Football Now Sunday morning, which we were talking about Taysom Hill, and both you and I said we would start him over Lamar Jackson, we would start him over Dak Prescott, we would start him over Patrick Mahomes,
yeah.
right? And it was looking dicey there for a while, but he bailed us out ultimately. But what I said is like, look, think about last Thursday night. Taysom Hill played awful, 4 interceptions. Dak Prescott played really well, an impressive win for the Cowboys, and yet at the end of last Thursday night, Dak Prescott had 11 fantasy points and Taysom Hill had over 20. Yeah. And so, like, I said the problem is Dak Prescott isn't running anymore. And once again, that proved itself out. Like, they're deep. Part of the problem here, part of the problem is, and this is going to sound insane, but part of the problem is that the Cowboys have a good defense now. Right. Micah Parsons is an absolute beast. Yeah. I mean, it was embarrassing. It was awful to watch as a watch football team, but Dallas dominated that game. It wasn't as close as the score indicated. They made a run late, but hats off to the Cowboys. Like, they were awesome, but because their defense is playing so well field, and they got a pick 6 in this game as well against Washington, Dak isn't needing to throw the way he was in previous years.
Also, Dak does not play behind the lead offensive line anymore.
No,
this is also true. Okay, offensive line, but it's not an elite offensive line.
And Tyron Smith went out yesterday with an injury as well. I mean, and Dak, I don't know. It's interesting because he's very much, when he speaks to the media afterwards, he's very aware and very cognizant of that things are not clicking and they're not going well, and he's making some mistakes. But you saw him sailing the ball a couple times. Feels like he's hurrying and not seeing the field as well as he usually does, or even as he did when the season started. But to be fair to Mike Clay, I was in the Dak Prescott camp for yesterday's game as well, and Ezekiel Elliott is not running well. I thought he'd have a better day yesterday. We talked on Fantasy Football Now about him having a PCL injury, wearing a brace. Felt really good during the week. Said it was the best he'd felt actually since the injury back in week 4. So I thought you really might see a different performance out of him. At one point, he walked out of the game and he looked to be limping, and he's just not right. And we didn't have Tony Pollard yesterday because of the partially torn plantar fascia. This is a problem because even if Tony Pollard comes back, and there is some thought that maybe he'll be available for week 15. Remember, Mike McCarthy had said it was going to come down to a game time decision for him this week. Tony Pollard is beneficial to them because of his explosiveness. Mm-hmm. It's pretty hard to have that when you're trying to push off a partially torn plantar fascia. It's not something that heals overnight. So I really don't know what to offer up when he comes back, because it really just depends on how he can play through the pain. The pain won't be gone.
By the way, that's my excuse as well. I think I tore my plantar fascia. That's why I'm not fast anymore. I think I tore both of them.
It's weird. How did that happen coming out of the womb for you? Because
it's unbelievable. I don't know. I think the doctor just yanked my foot a little bit and just tore it. I had one of those. Do you even have a plantar fascia reform? One of those old school doctors, cigarette hanging out.
In your knee.
Just kind of yanked it out, the big thing there. Dak Prescott, by the way, this is now under 12 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4. He's had over 16 rushing yards just once this season. Again, he's not running. If there is a bright spot here, Field Yates, it's that they play the Giants next week. And so if there is a fix-me game or a get-right game for Dak Prescott, one would hope that it happens against the Giants.
Let me put it this way. Trust?
No. Again, same thing. If we're using the argument of am I automatically starting Dak Prescott and not at all looking around to see what other options I have? No, that's not the case. I feel better about Patrick Mahomes than I do about Dak Prescott. And you heard me say with Mahomes, listen, if Taysom Hill were available in my league,
but give me somebody else besides Patrick Mahomes. Who do you feel?
I got an idea. Hey, Kyle, for Wednesday, what we should do, because we did this Wednesday floating segment. Let's put together a list of okay, if you're really going to sit a Dak Prescott, who are 2 or 3 quarterback options? If you're really going to sit a Zeke Elliott, who are 2 or 3 running back options? Things like that. Let me just
let's
there
go.
are 6 Cowboys players that in some circumstances were once considered set it and forget it. Dak, no longer the case. Zeke, yes or no?
Yes, just because
agreed.
Running backs,
Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, or Michael Gallup. Any of those absolute must starts?
CeeDee Lamb.
I agree on that. Amari Cooper, I think, is probably there as well. The upside significant, but as we know, he's under 70 receiving yards in 4 straight games and 9 of his last 10. So he can score touchdowns, but there can also be quiet games for him.
Yeah, without the touchdown, he's 5 for 50.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
551 yesterday, and you're okay, whatever, 10 fantasy points. That's Jamison Crowder. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like Jamison Crowder didn't do that yesterday, but you know what I'm saying? Like, no one's drafted Amari Cooper for 10 fantasy points.
Sure, totally. Last one here. Dalton Schultz, their tight end, who was so good to begin the season, right? He's not that anymore, is he?
No, he's not a tight end one anymore.
1 catch for 4 yards. He might be just because go find another.
It's so brutal. But look, listen, Ricky Seals-Jones was brutal yesterday as well. But I mentioned this on Fansful Now, and I hope he makes your waiver wire column. He's going to play a ton of snaps, and they're playing the Eagles 2 of the next 3.
The hoop got loose, though, yesterday. Austin Hooper found it.
Yes, he did.
Let's move things forward here to Seattle, who wins a game against Houston. They now still have, they have a pulse in the NFC playoff picture. Russell Wilson, 17 for 28, 260 yards, 2 touchdowns, 21.2 fantasy points. Rashaad Penny was the story yesterday. So we'll get to Rashaad Penny in a second, though. But the problem is, if we have 8 quarterbacks that are no longer absolute must starts, it probably indicates that maybe they kind of all are must starts because there's 2 guys you trust, like Josh Allen if he's healthy, Brady, and I don't know, Jalen Hurts, but whatever. Russell Wilson,
Justin Herbert,
must start. Yeah, Herbo, must start for Russell Wilson. You trust him anymore or no?
No, I mean, it feels better. Definitely feels better. But it's one thing to beat up on the Texans. But, they're at the Rams next week, and we'll see what L.A. looks like tonight, obviously, right here on ESPN. Of course, I'm a company man. But thank you, sir. But no, I don't think he's necessarily a must-start. I think he's back to being a viable QB1.
Yeah.
And he's back to being Russell Wilson, right? Looks like he's got all 10 fingers. But, well, you know what I mean, Stephania.
I know. Before you were like, he shouldn't need 10 fingers.
He doesn't need them all because he's Russell Wilson. Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, he can play with his left hand. Anyway, so no, I mean, I think he's back to being a viable QB1, but do I think he's a no-brainer, set it and forget it? I don't look at any other options. Quarterback? No. Not on the road at the Rams.
Yeah, no, I agree on that part. That is worth noting as well. Though a good schedule in 16 and 17. Chicago and Detroit, both at home. You like each of those matchups or solid spots if you make it to your semis or your finals. Rashaad Penny, what a story this was yesterday. Both Rashaad and Elijah Penny scored a touchdown, Stephania.
I know, Rashaad Penny. So I remember I used to talk about him a lot because, there was all this hope for him when the Seahawks drafted him. And then he's been sidelined with injuries for so much of his career. And so I went back and looked this up, and I had forgotten he was drafted ahead of Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
How about that? I mean, so ever since he was drafted, let's see, he's missed 21 games because of injury coming into this year. He'd missed 21 games because of injury, so you can add to that, including 13 last season. So we never really saw any sort of sustained performance from Rashaad Penny, and you sort of forgot what it was about him that had the Seahawks eye. And then yesterday, I think we saw it, because you forget about the size. He is solid back. And yesterday he looked fantastic. I was really happy for him. I mean, 16 rushes for 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. And right now, I don't, Alex Collins isn't healthy. Whatever, combination groin, abdominal injury, it's not going to be him. We know Chris Carson's done for the year. They might have something here in Rashaad Penny.
He makes a waiver wire column. He might actually lead the waiver wire column this week. And we talked about this. He was the sort of fun, chalky DFS play this week because his price was so ridiculously low. He showed well last week in that game in which they, Stephania, beat the 49ers.
Yes.
The signs were pointing towards not a breakout, but a potential opportunity for him to play much more. He capitalized on it. He'll be...
It was the Texans, right? So again, let's see how he does it against the Rams next week. But still, he did what he should have done against a bad opponent, which is he crushed.
Yeah, he crushed. That's right. The 2 wide receivers, 4 catches, 43 yards for DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett, 5 catches, 142 yards and a touchdown. Matthew, you're starting Tyler Lockett. I think that part is
you trust him.
You trust him. DK Metcalf, do you trust it? Which I know Stephania's oh my God, we're testing Tyler Lockett and not DK Metcalf.
You could rewind the tape to the start of the season. We were like, where is Tyler Lockett? Usually he's boom or bust, but we didn't have any booms whatsoever. And now you guys are saying you trust Tyler Lockett. That's how much his season has turned. I just want to point that out.
Metcalf? What do you do with DK Metcalf this offseason if you're the Seahawks? He's extension eligible, probably wants a contract, and obviously he's an amazing talent. What do you do, though? After this year in which... What was the last time he scored a touchdown? I think it was week 7. Week 7 was the last touchdown
of the
for DK
2013 season. I'm almost positive. Thirsty guy, you can fact check me on that, but I'm almost positive. DK Metcalf last scored a touchdown in 2013. Halloween of this year. Interesting.
Yeah.
You go Halloween to Christmas with no touchdowns.
Yeah.
Let's move things forward here. And how about this? The Saints yesterday get a 30-9 win over the Jets. And so we're going to concede. There was some nerves coursing through our veins yesterday as Taysom Hill was stuck on 6 fantasy points until midway through the third quarter. But in the same way that we talk about, if he had come out of the gates, Tom Brady was great for the first half yesterday. Second half, he did nothing. He obviously had a touchdown in the overtime, but no one's sitting here saying Brady only got most of his points in an 8-minute stretch early. Yes, Taysom Hill got most of his points in an 8-minute stretch late, but they still count, Matthew. And this is the crux of why Taysom Hill is so valuable in fantasy football. 73 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, including it was a 31-yard touchdown late, a 41-yard rushing touchdown late, 26.3 fantasy points. After the early slate of games, he was the highest scoring quarterback for the week.
Yeah, listen, and he's not 100% roster, which is insane to me.
56%.
We've been talking about him for a couple of weeks now. I don't know how much, but even if you don't need him, if you're I got Tom Brady, I got Josh Allen, I don't need Taysom Hill, but you know what? Somebody else in your league does, and better for him to be sitting on your bench than being used against you as well. Now, they play at Tampa Bay next week. Tougher defense, although Josh Allen just ran for 100 yards on him. So, look, Taysom Hill, it's not going to be pretty, but he was on the love list this week. I had him as a top 4 fantasy quarterback play coming into this week. Field had him at 2. I thought I was high on him. Field, you had him at 2. And one of the arguments that I used, which was similar to what you were thinking as well, again, the man's now made 6 starts as a quarterback since the start of last year. He's never had less than 17.5 fantasy points, and he's going into this game against the Jets. He averaged 21 fantasy points as a starter quarterback. He finishes with 26.3 in this game against the Jets. So obviously that average of 21 will go higher. Just did that math in my head. No big deal. Don't want to brag, but literally just boom. I didn't go to Princeton either, but I was able to just boom. I know that if his average was 21 and he scores 26.3, his average will go up.
Do you ever think about how there are there are a lot of professors that watch this show daily in the live stream, and they must just marvel when they're wait. There's the president of Harvard right now sitting there did he just tell me that?
Meanwhile, the president of Syracuse is do not remind people that that's where you went to school.
Right. I hang in my office at home. I have a degree from Syracuse University. Thank you very much. I'm a proud graduate. That's right. They can't take it back.
It's not honorary.
They can't take it back.
We'll find out.
Not an honorary degree.
A real degree, a for reals degree.
Alvin Kamara was also back for the Saints yesterday, Stephania, and he passed the eye test in a major way.
Yeah, he sure did. And this is where it really paid off for the Saints to protect him, I think, a little bit after this second MCL injury. And then we actually heard that part of the reason he was out as long as he was they felt he'd recovered from the knee, but he developed a hamstring issue, and they didn't want that to then become a big thing. So that is why, even though we got teased by Alvin Kamara in practice, we didn't see him until yesterday. And hey, he looked great. 16 touches in the first half alone. And then he didn't really slow down in the second half either. They continued to use him. As long as we hear he's no worse for the wear on the day after, that's always the big test. But he looked fine. He looked good. He looked very Alvin Kamara-like. And that's great news for fantasy managers for the playoffs. Yeah.
They play the Bucs next Sunday. Not ideal, but still 4 catches for Alvin Kamara, which is good news. All right, we've got a few minutes.
I trust Alvin Kamara.
Yes, we both trust Alvin Kamara. We all do.
By the way,
Taysom Hill.
Paul's for text me, 21.9. Taysom Hill now averaging 21.9 fantasy points as a starting quarterback, which is more than the 21 points he averaged coming in. So it's an increase by 0.9.
So just confirmed your math knowledge.
Well,
that's awesome.
It's an increase of
really
0.9.
Yeah.
His average went up 0.9.
Wow, you could do that all by yourself. Did Pulsifer text you the addition and subtraction?
That one I did on my own, Stephania. So here's what I did. So the new average is 21.9. The old average was 21. So if you take 21.9 and you subtract 21, you get 0.9. 0.9
Where's
Field.
the point?
You get 0.9.
I don't get it.
And so that's the difference. That's how much Taysom Hill's average increased after this start against the Jets, 0.9 points. And that's how I did it. Yeah. I just showed you my math. I don't like to take people behind the curtains too much.
Like you didn't have to carry a one
there
or
you
anything.
go. No, I was able, listen, Princeton, this is, some of us have a steel trap for a mind. That's all I'm going to say. I understand, like, whatever. You got to use your little calculator and your little computer and whatever, and, like, do. But some of us were just able to, like,
yeah. Uh-huh.
There's
just like
that,
Johnny on the spot there.
There's that Dave Gettleman gif of him typing on the computer. Matthew's about to one-up it right now.
Please clip that. And then,
3 receivers.
We'll need that.
Oh, we sure will. 3 receivers trying to figure out whether they're getting hot or not right now.
Yeah.
We'll start with Brandon Cooks. Matthew at 8 catches, 101 yards, 18.1 fantasy points.
Yep.
Whoops. I thought he was going to have a dud game.
I did too. He made the hate list. That was my, if I'm going to sit here and pat myself. I had a really good love-hate week. A lot of ones came true, but Brandon Cooks on the hate list was a bad call by me. But positive. It was a positive sign. One of the things we were concerned about here is that Seattle's defense played better, but also Davis Mills, right? We're just like, boy, Davis Mills, I think coming into this game, out of the 6 games he'd started, 3 of them, he didn't have a touchdown pass. I think that's what's encouraging to me if you have Brandon Cooks, who I think is really the only fantasy viable player on the Texans at the moment. You feel encouraged by the performance of Davis Mills, and I don't know that he's their starting quarterback next year, but I don't know that he's not.
Right.
And at this point, I think that's a victory for the Texans. There's still potential that he could turn into something.
I'm a believer in Nick Caserio and their GM. I think they're going to figure things out. It's going to take some time, but you're right. Like, I got to tell you, Davis Mills, like, are there reasons to be super discouraged about him relative to what these other rookie quarterbacks are doing? Right? Like, I mean, other than Mac Jones, who we think is, the real deal now for sure, all the other rookie quarterbacks still leaving something more to be desired. Speaking of more, DJ Moore yesterday, 6 catches, 84 yards.
Oh, yeah.
So here's the good news. Not a lot of touchdown equity here. He has 1 touchdown since week 4, but there are a lot of targets, 7+ targets in every game this season, 84 yards yesterday. I think the big thing right now, I think part of the reason why, like, DJ Moore is a tricky one is that, like, how do you trust anything about this offensive operation right now, right? It's Cam Newton and then P.J. Walker, then Cam Newton and P.J. Walker. It's all weird right now.
Robbie Anderson made an appearance.
I know, out of nowhere, right? So, Matthew, do you trust DJ Moore? I think I do.
I trust the volume.
That's what I'd
say. I mean, like 10 targets in this one, to your point. He's had at least 7 targets in every game. I know you said that. So, to me, I trust that. I trust the volume. And I trust the fact that they're going up to Buffalo next week and they're going to have to score points to keep up with the Bills. And then they're home to the Buccaneers. Same thing. They're going to have to throw to keep up with Tampa Bay. And so I trust the volume. Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's not what he was. He started out the season red hot, but, low-end wide receiver 2.
I would agree. Yeah. I just want to see some more touchdowns.
Sure, of course.
We'll see. The Bills, I thought, actually acquitted themselves pretty well yesterday in the first real game, full game without Tre'Davious White. I'm throwing away Monday night because of so few runs. I'm impressed by that defensive back development, which they always are. The Bills are always solid in the secondary. All right, let's wrap things up with some Monday Night Football updates here. And Stephania, the Rams are down to Sony Michel at running back.
Yeah, Darrell Henderson is not going to be available for them, so we told you that was going to be the case. Anyway, he's been dealing with the quad strain and then the COVID-19 as well.
So we'll see whether he's available next week, by the way. Obviously, that's a quick turn to go from Saturday to the following Sunday being available. We'll keep our eye. That was actually Sunday for Darrell Henderson. I'm sorry. Was it Saturday or was it yesterday that he got placed on the COVID-19?
Yeah,
it was
Saturday
afternoon. Saturday afternoon. So anyway,
Saturday
still 8
night
days.
merges into Sunday for us. So, but here's the thing. What was concerning for me originally is when you have something that's that late, you wonder about the rest of the team. Mm-hmm. So just keep your ears open.
Well, they did place 2 more players on the COVID list yesterday, starting right tackle Rob Havenstein and another defensive back as well.
Just follow news today and updates just in case there are any late additions.
Speaking of updates, at some point today, Stephania, we'll figure out whether Chase Edmonds will be activated for the Cardinals. Do you think there's a chance?
I think there's a chance. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury said that there was a chance that they would activate him, but he also said there was a chance, Kyler Murray would play as a game time decision for several weeks. And if you look at the logic of the Cardinals, they've wanted to preserve their players with an eye on the postseason. Chase Edmonds coming off injured reserve for that ankle issue. James Conner's been running so well. And with Chase Edmonds not having much time since he was designated for return, I wouldn't be surprised if they held him out. Now, we have heard that he's going to play, but if he does, I think the role will be small. I'm not sure I'd be willing to wager fantasy playoff spot on starting Chase Edmonds.
I agree with that, Stephania. Yeah, I'm not starting Chase. I want to see it first when it comes to Chase Edmonds. I want to see it first. So we'll see whether he's active or not. But I think for our purposes, You're starting James Conner. You're obviously starting Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. In terms of Christian Kirk or Rondell Moore or Zach Ertz, sort of obviously depends on your options or what else you have here. Chances are you've probably already made the decision on Ertz. Other side of the ball, in terms of the Rams, I think this is interesting. I like Van Jefferson in this one.
Okay.
Like Cooper Kupp, so my little Cooper Kupp is obviously a no-brainer, and Sony Michel should get all the work and have a very good game here, but feels like this is a Van Jefferson game, not a OBJ game.
Okay.
Just more of a gut call than anything else.
Okay, Van Jefferson perhaps over OBJ. OBJ scored a back-to-back game, so Van Jefferson's been really, really good
Really
for
good.
the Rams. We are back on Tuesday. You know why? We're talking waivers. We're recapping Monday Night Football and plenty of updates available.
There might be more math in my head. I mean, I don't like to brag and show it off every single show, but I might. You never know.
Have long division down pat by tomorrow. For Matthew and Stephania and Kyle on field, we'll talk to you guys on Tuesday. Good luck with your Monday Night Miracles tonight.
Peace out.